These are exciting times in the world of Hopevale Church and exciting times in the world of the Pardee family. And at some point, both of those parties are going to get together. That point is happening in the very near future. And I have the privilege of helping introduce Josh and Brandy Pardee and the family to the family at Hopevale Church. So at the very beginning, as we connect via Zoom, let me say hello, and I can't wait to meet you all in person. How's life in Illinois right now?
Well, we are excited too, and excited to get to be in person in Saginaw and Bay City, and get to be a part of the Hopevale family. Things are good. They're busy right now, as you might expect, trying to navigate lots of different channels right now. But otherwise, they're going pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
Well, you and I, Josh, in next week's edition of the podcast, are going to really dive deep into the world of ministry and your history, your education, your philosophy on those things. But this conversation is really going to focus on the family side of things so that all of us can get a better feel for the Pardees. Now, I know you've probably never heard the play on words "party with the Pardees." So, I'll use it just to get it out of the way. But Brandy, I'm curious, when you first started talking about this idea of being a senior pastor somewhere, from a mom and a wife perspective, what kind of thoughts went through your mind, and maybe through some of the conversations the two of you have had?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, excitement. So, and I feel like it's been, a natural progression just of God's leading, as well as just as we've been in ministry, stirring that's been happening over a period of time. So from a mom and family perspective, I feel like we've, ever since we've been married, we've been in ministry, as well as that's all our kids have known. So I feel like we enjoy it. We love being able to partner together, him and I, but as a family too, we just love doing life with people. So I know there will be new responsibilities, but I also am excited and think it's just, a next piece of perhaps what God is calling us, him, and our family to. So
now, if my wife were sitting right here next to me, like the two of you are, she would mostly want me to start asking about those kids. So can you introduce this? We'll have the two of you kind of introduce this to the entire family before we talk more about mom and dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our oldest boy, Tegan, is 9. And then our next son, Ruger, is 7. And then we have a daughter who is named Kaisa, and she is 4. I'm going to tell
9,
a little bit.
7, and 4 down the line. And if I know pastors' kids, kind of the mentality, they're perfect, right? They're just completely perfect at all times.
Yeah, we should probably debunk that right now.
Let's start with that.
We're a pretty normal family, deal with all the normal family things. So as you could imagine, anyone who is maybe listening along and has younger kids, that means our life is pretty full, and we deal with the, you get asked the same question 1,000 times in a row, and you remind them of the same. I find my life to be very redundant, right? Like it's reminding of the same things every day over and over. And sometimes they succeed at doing it. Sometimes they do not. So
every once in a while they get it right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I often compare raising little children to being a major league shortstop. If you can bat 300, you're an all-star.
I like that. That's good.
Where did Josh and Brandy first meet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we met in Montana. His parents are the directors of a Christian youth camp. And so after high school, I went out to work there at the camp, and he was working that summer as well. And we both were part of a lot of the like sports and adventure camps. So there's always like regular week of camp, but then there's sometimes like a specific basketball camp or specialty camps. Yeah. And we often were, both of our cabin groups were often those same ones. So we ended up just becoming really good friends. And then towards the end of the summer started dating after that, before we both kind of headed for college.
Josh, love at first sight?
Certainly interest at first sight. The funny thing is, I actually, because I grew up at the camp, when Brandy showed up, we had some mutual friends who had invited her to come work at camp. I had never met her, and then she was kind of getting settled in her cabin and getting ready for our staff training and stuff. And I actually took her parents, and I think her little sister was around. So I gave them the whole tour of the camp and, all the history and doing that whole bit. And so got to know them a little bit. And then, we just kind of hit it off right away and kept, like Brandy said, just kept growing in our friendship. And eventually, the worst kept secret in all of camp was that we were going to start dating at some point. So this was not news to anyone who was there that summer. And then we even going a little bit further. So then we dated long distance for about a year and a half, or somewhere in there. I went to Moody Bible Institute for my undergrad, and Brandy was going to Northwestern up in St. Paul. Mm-hmm. And then she couldn't live without me and decided to transfer to Moody. Is a version of the story that I will stick to. So
it's always good to get your version out there. And it's kind of funny. We have so many things in common. I didn't really know all of that, but my wife and I met working on staff at a Christian youth camp in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and called Hiawatha Youth Camp. And her first words to me ever were, "Are you Bill Hobson?" Yes. And she said, "The last time I saw you, you were a fat little camper." And that's how it launched. So I'm sure you guys have some memories as well, because when you serve together on the staff of a camp, you become friends before you become involved in any sort of a dating relationship, because you're in the kitchen together, you're out doing things together, and you see each other in this kind of a make-believe world. But it's kind of a fun world because somebody else is making all the meals and fixing all the stuff. And so you kind of get this false start, and then it gets real when you're away from there and you start dating. So it's kind of cool to hear somebody else with a similar experience. So Brandy, when you got away from camp and you began dating, there are some moments, there are these memorable moments where you think, you know what, Lord, I think this might be the guy for me forever. Was that a light bulb moment for you, or was it a slow processed crock pot experience where it took a while?
Well, from the beginning, when we kind of said, okay, are we going to date? Do we want to intentionally pursue each other? We kind of laid the foundation of just saying, hey, we want to have fun. We want to get to know each other. But if ever, you don't think that it could be a possibility of, maybe pursuing marriage, then let's call it off. So I do feel like it definitely was that crockpot of the growth. Like, I feel like we had a great friendship and foundation. And I feel like almost it kind of felt natural, if that makes sense. Because it was kind of like either we're dating and we're moving towards that, or we're going to be done. So since we kept dating, I felt like, that was always on the table. And then I don't know what it was, a light bulb moment. I think eventually it was kind of like, are we, maybe going to talk about marriage? Maybe not. And it was towards the end of our, right before our senior year, that we got married. So eventually we had that conversation and just felt like, I feel like we're, I would say he's like, my best friend. And that was true, that I was excited to continue journeying with him and being spouses versus just dating. So
can I hop in real quick?
His version. Sure, I want to hear your version. Yeah.
No, I was just reflecting as you were asking the questions and just thinking back to I think we were great friends. And I think part of the other piece of it was we got to see each other in all aspects of life, which was just super helpful, I feel like, for both of us. So camp ministry is a little bit like, not real life, but it's also very intense. So we got to see each other in that intense. I mean, there's some intense weeks when you're counseling kids that have a lot of issues in their life.
Often tiring.
Yeah, very tiring and draining.
In Montana in the summer.
Yeah. And then we dated long distance, so we kind of got to see life through that lens. And then the summer we got engaged. She was living with some family friends up in the Minneapolis area, and then I lived with some other family friends. And so we just kind of had normal day jobs and kind of got to see what life would be like there. So it's just, I don't know, I think like looking back, we've kind of both expressed like just how much we appreciated getting to see each other in all facets of life. And I think that's what gave us just a lot of confidence moving forward, that it was like, I feel like I've seen all of who Brandy is, and she's seen all of me in all these facets. And it's not, sometimes you can only, because of how life works out, you maybe don't get all of that opportunity, but we're both grateful for that, I think. So.
Now, you've mentioned being out west, and you've mentioned Minnesota and Moody and Chicago, but there is some Michigan connection, I think, somewhere weaving its way through the Pardee family tree. Can you, something triggered in to make you a Michigan fan? So take us into that part of the story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like to say that I've tasted and seen the good news of the kingdom of God, of who our Heavenly Father is, and that has led me into the fandom of Michigan. I don't know how the Lions fit into that exactly, but
testing of your faith.
Yeah, maybe the Book of Lamentations, if you will. No, so my family is all originally from Michigan. My parents both grew up in Michigan. My dad was over in Lansing. I think I tell you it was about 4 or 5, and then his family moved up to the UP. And so my mom's family has been in the Escanaba. She grew up in Escanaba area, if you're familiar with the UP up there. And my dad also then was in Gladstone and then Escanaba. So I have never lived in the state of Michigan, been a resident, but my grandparents have resided there my whole life. We spent a lot of time going back and traveling and visiting them, and still have family up in the UP. And yeah, so then the Michigan connection is because I grew up in Montana and there's no sports teams near Montana. And I have this rich history of both sides of the family, of being kind of Detroit fans all the way around. And then my side of the family was more of the Michigan fans, and my cousin's side was all the Michigan State fans. And so you just kind of grew up in that, and didn't go to a D1 school. I went to Moody Bible Institute. And so then it was just, that's what we did on Saturdays, right? We watched Michigan football, and just kind of carried that legacy and continue to disciple my children in the ways of that. So
a good father indeed. I think about this idea of senior pastors, pastors at every level. Frankly, it's a family deal. It's not just, hey, we're going to have this guy work on our church staff, and the family is completely separated from that. It is a full team effort. And Brandy, I'm curious to learn from you how you have played a role in ministry and what your passions are. What kind of things get you fired up when you think about serving within a local church and kind of in that role of a pastor's wife?
Yeah. Well, right now, I would say in this season, I've had to discern, what capacity I have having young kids. And we have, the last few years, just felt led to be educating our kids at home. And so a lot of my time and passions as well, I would say, has kind of been given to that. Part of that is because during COVID, a group of us kind of started a hybrid school. And so I'm a part of that leadership team. But then also, I would say I really enjoy and have administrative gifts. So a lot of that has been being channeled in that direction. I've also, I would say, just with Josh, a lot of what he's pursuing or what's going on with him in ministry, we process often things together, pray, spending time in that way. But then when I've had more time available, or even before children, I've had the opportunity to be involved in women's ministry, which has been just a real sweet space to be able to pursue Jesus with other women and study God's word. And I really love creating spaces for women, but also for anybody in the church or couples through like retreats or just different opportunities to kind of pull away. So I've gotten to be a part of a lot of different planning for retreats that have also had some opportunities, again, with probably administrative details, but also kind of trying to craft and shape a space where people can enter in to be with one another, but also just to be in God's presence and welcome and foster that. So yeah, I'm trying to think through any other. Those are kind of, women's ministry as well as retreat ministry. And then I would say spiritual formation or discipleship as well. I would say that that's probably a bigger passion. I like to look at whether it's even with my kids and kids ministry or with us or just friends in general, what are we reading or talking about or listening to? And then what's the big picture to help us form who we want to be or what we want to see for fruit. So that's also something that's come out through either being a part of Bible study groups and speaking and leading, but then also with our own children and schooling and stuff too. So
I have this philosophy that you can take the counselor away from the camp, but you never get the camp out of the counselor, right? So we always think in terms of studying or leading smaller groups. And sort of like you would have done a week at a time, only now it's of course longer term, and maybe that's just me, or maybe that's just us in this house, but kind of tend to view things in terms of, man, even if I have just 8 people with me or 10 people with me, the God put them in this setting for a reason.
Yep.
And whatever the reason is, I don't want to mess it up. I want to make the most out of that time. And reach them if it's short term or if it's long term, if it's one meal or if it's a 12-week study, whatever it is. And it sounds like your heart's kind of geared towards that as well.
Yeah. Well, and it even was just making me think, I feel like having kids, some of it has even come just from the natural relationship crossing points. And so same, whether it's been moms and parents that we've met at the park, where it is that maybe it's a quick interaction, maybe it's a one-time thing, but then some of my closest friends have come from the moms I've met at the pool and our kids just clicked, or other people that have just had a desire to want to, pursue Jesus as we're parenting or as we're being, spouses or things. So yeah, it's a gift to be able to be a part of, whoever God brings across our path. So,
Josh, you've been in ministry for quite a while, and I know that people who are perhaps seeing the two of you for the first time think that you might still be in college or in high school because you both look so young, and I feel so old. But you've been in ministry for quite a while, and like I said earlier, we'll talk about more of your ministry background next week. But I'm curious as to how, as a pastor who has a wife who's also engaged in ministry, how you see like a ministry to families and ministry to couples kind of flowing out of that. You've got 3 small kids, and granted, your 3 are perfect. We've already covered that. But you're going to come in contact with a lot of families who also have 2, 3, 4 small kids. And sometimes the thought is, oh man, he's the senior pastor or he's the lead pastor. He could never relate to us. How do you take your family experience into ministry in a way that helps people kind of connect to you as a real person, as a real couple, as a real family?
Yeah. Well, we just let them see all the dysfunction, and then they're like, "Oh, okay."
Exactly.
No, I mean that is partially true. Of just, I think, and Brandy is modest about some of her gifting, but like, I think both of our hearts and Brandy's gifting is really great at just pulling people into, hey, this is who we are, and this is how we live, and we don't get it right all the time, and we're pretty transparent on talking about the things that we feel like we're not doing well at, and or trying to figure out how to work on different things. And so, we're very much like every other young parent out there who's trying to figure out what does it mean to have a 9-year-old right now who has some opinions now of how his life should go, and sometimes those collide with our opinions of how his life should be going. And I think like the beautiful thing is there's lots of teachable moments for us in that. And there's actually a beautiful way that we can learn about Jesus and his kingdom through children. That's actually one of the famous stories in the Bible, right? Is the children coming to Jesus. And there's wisdom for us to grab on there and to recognize our own humanities in the ways we relate to our Heavenly Father in those same ways. So yeah, I think a lot of it is just letting people see who we are and that we have the same wrestles and struggles, and trying to faithfully figure out what does it mean to steward our kids and to love them well and to call out who God has created them to be. And we do it to the best of our abilities. And when we fall short, one of the things we try to be really good about is apologizing to our kids. And I think that is a very important piece of discipleship for us as parents, and also for our kids to see adults who are willing to name the places that they fall short and ask for forgiveness, and then be willing to forge a way forward from that. And so I think just even talking about that, like, I think we probably all can relate to that, and we all desire that. And we want to be in a place where we all recognize that people aren't perfect. I don't think we actually long for people to be perfect, because we know that's unattainable, but we want people to be real, and we want to know that it's a safe place. And we want to know that when the going gets tough, that I can still show up and be who I am, and I will be loved and accepted, and we'll figure it out. And so for me, that's just compelling, right? Like, so we're trying to live that out as a little microcosm in our family unit, our nuclear family, but then we get to live that out as the church too, and figure out how to navigate that as multiple families. And what does it look like for us? And what does it look like for Hopevale to be in Saginaw, and to be in Bay City and all around, and navigate that. So
you will probably, if you haven't already, quickly realize that I don't have a script here. We're just talking. I don't have an outline. So if I throw you for a loop with a question or something, no, it's not on purpose. I'm not trying to pitch you.
No, they're
but
good.
You know, in this context of let's introduce the Pardees to our family up here. Let's go playlists. You didn't see that coming, did you?
I did not.
So if you were to grab my phone, which is just a couple feet over here, and you were to go to my music section, you would be like, what era did you grow up in? Because, you know, I'm Sinatra, I'm Tony Bennett, I got Harry Connick and Bublé and all sorts. All right, Brandy, the playlist. It's either the jogging playlist or the workout playlist or the around the house playlist. What's it look like for Brandy Pardee?
Well, the top 10 list would probably be a mix of like Frozen and Sing 2 and our Star Wars. Actually, a lot of Star Wars gets thrown in there.
John Williams did good work. So
our Spotify algorithm is completely messed up, because it's just our children. It's like it's our music, and then all of a sudden it's a Star Wars song or whatever. If you just listen to the yeah.
I really do enjoy worship music and plethora. I feel like I have some playlists that would be like my what would I like, not necessarily all hymns, but like maybe the songs that have been hymns and also then become, you know, maybe set to a more contemporary or modern genre. And I couldn't say that I have like one specific. I just often will even type in like worship 2023 or whatever and see what comes on. Another one would be like Drew and I'm bad at remembering artist names. What's his wife?
Ellie Holcomb.
Ellie Holcomb would be one, as well as Ben Rector. Those are kind of like some go-tos as far as me and even our house.
Yeah.
How about Josh on the treadmill or out on the road pounding the pavement?
Yeah, I do. I'm the same. I listen to a wide variety. So I'm all over the place. Sometimes I like to go to like oldies. Sometimes I like some newer stuff. We listen to, we try and diversify for our kids to give them a variety of things. So one of the fun things that I did this past year was for both my boys, I let them create their own playlist, and then they have to like pull from different genres and different eras, and I get an ultimate veto on what they can't put on their playlist because it's important. It's their first playlist ever. Like, so I'm notorious though. Here's what I'm notorious for. I'm not the guy who like makes all of his playlists. I like to just rely on the work of others who like to spend a lot more time thinking about this than I do. What I am notorious for is knowing about one or two lines to almost every song, but not knowing any more than the one or two lines. And so then I just walk around singing those same lines because the song's in my head, but I only can reference like a little part of the chorus or something. So that's a little quirk that I have that sometimes gets thrown in my face around the house. So.
I was just going to ask if that was super popular among the other family members.
Yeah. Even people at church are not always thrilled about it, but we all have our cross to carry, so it's fine.
And he often, you might say something that then will remind him of something, and his response to you will be like that little one phrase, and that's all he knows. But he's good at the recall, at least in the moment to. That is to a song.
That is one of my favorite games to play, is to just respond to everybody with whatever song, like with a response that I need to give, but to song lyrics, if I can.
So it's a Mad Libs song-based version.
Yes.
Just pulling phrases out of left, just wherever they're flying around in your mind. Good. At some point, when you guys had the very serious conversation about this potential move to the middle of Michigan, I have to think that there were some quiet moments of deep reflection, obviously of prayer. And I'm wondering about that first trip that you both made together. So Brandy, you were here on a weekend when Josh was largely engaged in meetings and that kind of thing. And you were also being taken around to some different and just looking around. Can I ask you for maybe your first impressions of this, what you got to see of the Great Lakes Bay region? And let me preface that by saying I believe you came in the dead of winter, when it's not necessarily the most inviting. But what were your impressions when you came up here?
Yeah, well, I'm from South Dakota originally, and then also being here in Illinois, I would say it reminded me of all of that. The sun, didn't want to come out for however many days we were there. A little gray, a little cold. No, honestly, I really enjoyed the area as far as what I got to see. It felt a little bit like home and still feeling rural in some places, seeing like a field and trees and love that there's so many opportunities to be in nature, whether like with the river there, bike paths that people were talking about, or just all the things which we really love being able to do. I love it, but then as a family and our kids. But then, also still some of the benefits from my perspective, I felt like, but still big enough that there's still stores and there was still quite a bit of people. I grew up in a really small town, so I'd prefer kind of this mid size of still quite a few people, but maybe not. I wouldn't necessarily say my first pick would be a huge city either. So I felt like the area, just seemed really inviting as far as what it has to offer for nature and other things. But then also I felt like not only the people that I met as far as on the search team and the elders, and then, I didn't have a ton of interaction, but at a coffee shop or restaurants, that people were just super warm, super welcoming, inviting, kind. Could tell I felt like maybe a family focus or priority. I don't know if that, which I really appreciate, not only having a family, but also I think that can extend to, more people than just maybe your immediate family. So I felt that everybody was, very, very warm, very welcoming. It was good to be around.
The good news is if there is a backup at an intersection and it takes you 2 light cycles to get through, you might hear a few complaints, but compared to Chicago or Detroit, or you're exactly right. Our version of traffic is a little bit different than a lot of other places, and there is a friendliness here. There's a neighborliness here. A few years ago, when the 500-year flood impacted this region in a major way, it was an incredible outpouring of neighbors helping neighbors at the end of that. And there were homes, many of them involving the family of the church, homes just wiped right out. There was incredible damage all throughout the region, especially over in the Midland Way. But the stories, the testimonies that came out about not only how a church would come and serve, but how just neighbors would do that. And I'd like to think that there's more of that than we usually hear about around the country. We don't hear good news very often. It doesn't lead the newscast, but there is good news to be celebrated. And Josh, I'll ask you the same question. Just kind of first impressions. I know it's hardly fair because you've only been here a couple times, but your thoughts on coming in and getting to kind of get a little sliver of a taste of the region.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would echo everything Brandy said. You know, the first time over, we were together, and so it was fun. It was just the two of us. Our kids actually didn't make the trip, and so we got to kind of process all of that in real time together instead of having to navigate around their schedules. And so, yeah, I feel like all of that resonates. I feel like the balance of people valuing their careers and education and those things, but also being kind of family centric. It's just something that I think we both resonate with. And like Brandy said, you know, like maybe a more like city version, that's great, but it's people maybe lean a little bit more to the career focus and you're trying to figure out. And so it's just like, as we're sitting there, we're like, man, this feels like us, you know, like this feels like who we are and the things that we value. And then for me, a lot of it was just the people, just really appreciated from my very first interaction with the search team and all throughout our weekends together and getting to know the elders. I just felt like, man, if this is like just a small taste of who this church is, like that's a place we want to be. That's a place we can see being for a very long time. And we want our kids to be a part of a community like that. So, so I think for us, it was just all throughout. Every time I get off a call with the team, I would, you know, go back and tell Brandy, like, yeah, I really appreciated this. And I was really grateful that they thought about that and asked about that. And so I do want to just brag on both the search team and the elders. I felt like both were just incredible to work with. And that gets us excited about moving forward. And I think, you know, we met with Elaine and Randy the last day when both of us were over there, and then I made another trip over. But I remember sitting and talking with them on our final morning, and it just felt like, I mean, it was still early in the process, right? But I think we were kind of both on the way home just articulating, like, I mean, it just feels like home. Like it feels like where we're supposed to be. And obviously that was on the front end, and there was still more time to journey together and questions to be asked and things to wrestle through for sure. But I think even right away from that weekend, it was just like, oh, this feels very familiar and very much like where we want to be. So,
and I would just say with that too, that, and that's what he was communicating as well, that we both felt very cared for and very loved from the beginning. And so even that, you know, trying to just walk in with open hands, as well as when we left from our time there, just saying, you know what, God, we're trusting you in all of this and continuing to ask for discernment and wisdom. But wherever the journey leads, like I just had a gratefulness, like I just felt so loved and cared for. And they just met us, you know, and so that I feel like that's a testament to who not only the search team and elders, but I trust probably is the Hopevale community at large, which makes us really, really excited. So,
well, there are a lot of people not only interested in all of this, but praying for all of this, and specifically praying for your family. We don't take lightly the potential nervousness that all this brings about. This is a big deal. You take
Mhm.
your family and change zip codes, it's a big deal,
Mhm.
right? And all the lead up to that, I know that, and in fact, for many of the folks who are taking in our conversation, they might not realize this, but I think you're probably 5 or so months into a process that started with a broad conversation and has now worked its way to this candidating weekend that's coming up in March. And I would not in any way, shape, or form blame you if there were a few butterflies, if there was a little bit of nervousness from both of you.
Mhm.
So my last question to each of you, and Brandy, will start with you, and Josh, you can conclude, is how would you like us to pray for the two of you in the next several days leading up to your visit?
Yeah. Yeah. I so appreciate that. I would say specifically for our kids, been just slowly have, brought them into the journey and the process just of, discerning. And so they are at this point, where we're trying to affirm and hold with them that, if we end up moving, it would be really sad, and there's some really hard things. But also they're starting to sense this too of like, oh, but we want to be a part of what God's doing. And so there could be some exciting new things, and we could meet some new friends, and there'd be a new church family that, it just adds on to the church families we've been able to be a part of already. So I think just for us both to have wisdom and discernment as we help them navigate, and just asking God to meet and comfort them. And then, just all the details. I think for me, it's the details of, just being prepared for whatever next steps need to happen, but also just not rushing, being present to the moments of what's happening, and trusting that God will, He's taking care of the details, so we can faithfully go step by step. We don't need to be anxious or worrisome or give into that temptation when you start to look at the big picture of all the things. It can kind of feel overwhelming. So those are the first few things: kids, us, and then the details.
Kids never quite understand the concept of moving. It just sounds scary to them.
Sure.
Because they've only known where they are. So it's really good. Josh, how about for you?
Yeah, again, I'd mostly just echo, I think we're kind of in lockstep on those things. So that's kind of what's on our plate right now, of navigating our kids. And, we're excited to come over in a couple of weeks and get to be with everybody and get to experience the whole Hopevale experience. And so, I think that, and then just starting to piece together what if that transition does happen, then the details on our end of life, and navigating different conversations and all of that. And so just wanting, I think, you use the word present, like we want to be present well during this season, and we also want to be loving everybody in our lives well during this season. And so those are kind of in flux, and life maybe doesn't feel as stable at this moment as it does in other seasons. And so just trying not to run to other things or let our mind get focused on things that aren't in front of us. And so just kind of being where our feet are planted and trying to be present to whatever God has for us in that moment, I think is probably going to be where we're at for the next couple of weeks of where we're going to need to give our attention to. So,
there's ample scripture and encouragement to wait patiently before the Lord, but it's easier to read it than it is to do it. Right? I mean, that's just reality. That's why it's in there. So just know that there will be a lot of people lifting the two of you up, or the five of you up, in prayer in these days ahead. And time flies when you're having fun. So hopefully time will fly, and hopefully we'll have a great time as you get ready to come into town. And I think the people of Hopevale are going to really enjoy getting to know the Pardees. Thank you for giving us a little glimpse behind the curtain, and we'll look forward to getting to know you all even more in the days ahead.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Deeper Dive video podcast. To check out our full library, make sure to subscribe by clicking the button below. Also, make sure to select the bell icon in order to be notified of any new content as it is posted. If you would like to give to the Lord here at Hopevale and support the ministry, you can give by visiting hopevale.org/give. Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you and your family at Hopevale Church.